Since it's Halloween, today's stories come from the Let's Not Meet subreddit, where people share stories of the creepiest encounters they've had. Heroes can appear in many forms, but the hero of today's first story will surprise you. My, play doll saved my life. Posted by Branchy66. I'm a woman, and I bought myself a doll for Valentine's Day a couple of years ago. It's actually stunningly realistic, especially considering what I paid for it. One night, not long after the purchase, I enjoyed a rendezvous with my doll and fell asleep with him still in the bed next to me. I figured I'd get him put away in the morning, no big deal. Fast forward to about 3 AM. I was asleep and woke up to the sound of breaking glass. I was petrified, but before I could move to get my phone, which was charging across the room, I heard heavy footsteps approaching the door. So I just froze, pretending to be asleep. It was mostly a fear response, but there was also a voice in the back of my head saying if I didn't alert the intruder to my presence or engage with him, hopefully he'd just take the TV, or go through the medicine cabinet, whatever he came looking for, and dip out. But then, I heard heavy footsteps bypass my living room, with a nice big, easy to detach from the wall TV, then right past my bathroom, where one would naturally check for prescription drugs if that's what they're looking for. Then right past my study, with my laptop charging in plain sight, and my desktop as well. The guy comes bursting through my door. I hear it smash open, and I freeze, hoping if I pretend to be asleep, he'll just carry out the safe from my closet, or better yet, realise the most valuable stuff is in the other rooms, and leave. This all happened in the space of about 2 minutes. I hear him getting closer and thought, you have to fight back when he gets too close. But then thought, what if he has a weapon? And what if you're mishearing? As he got within 5 feet of my bed, I heard him stop, and then go running out of the house. I called the police as soon as I was sure he was gone, but I was still in shock. I realised they'd be coming over and would want to go through my bedroom as a crime scene, so I quickly got some clothes on and put my doll in the closet. The police came by, took my statement, and within a few days, they were able to track the guy down. It wasn't anyone I knew or had any affiliation with. They questioned him, and he told them that he'd come to rob me. When asked why me, he said he'd been casing houses in the neighbourhood for the last couple days, and mine seemed the easiest because it was a single story with a sliding door and a woman living alone. But nothing was taken. He went straight to my bedroom, and he hadn't even parked anywhere near my place, like you need to if you're trying to load up a TV. So the police doubted this story. They kept asking me to think through all my interactions with him, drilling down to whether or not there was anything I was leaving out because the two stories just didn't make any sense. Obviously, they'd considered whether he was there to kidnap me or something, but I put up no fight and was still pretending to be asleep when he bolted from the house. It made no sense. The police questioned him again and then called angrily, asking me to come in and go over my statement. I did, and I said it was all accurate. They looked at each other in a combination of frustration and disbelief, asking if I was sure there wasn't any details I was leaving out, reminding me that they were on my side and that they wouldn't be mad if I just told them anything I might be leaving out. I assured them that it was everything I remembered. Finally, they laid it all down, that when directly confronted with, "Why didn't you steal anything if you were there to rob the place?" the assailant told them I was going for the jewelry drawer and to check for designer clothes because they're the most valuable and easiest to walk out with and get rid of. But when I got to her room, her boyfriend was sleeping over, so I left. I didn't want to risk waking him up, and I wasn't looking for a confrontation. The cops asked why I didn't tell them my boyfriend was over and why he didn't stay after the incident, and said he needed to come in immediately to give a statement. That's what they've been driving at me to come forward with all this time. They thought that I'd been derailing the whole investigation by withholding this major detail. But I had no idea what this psycho intruder was talking about. I started to say, he's obviously lying. I've been single since... Then I realised. I sheepishly explained, and the cops and I had a good laugh over it. I think my play doll might have just saved my life, or at the very least, saved me from a much more traumatic encounter that night. I've officially gotten my money's worth. Attempted assailant of robbery or who else knows what? Let's not meet. Someone broke into my house and tried to find me. Posted by a staring void. A few years ago, I was renting a house in North Carolina. The neighbourhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance between having space and having nice neighbours close enough to not feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were clouds blocking the moonlight. It didn't bother me though, it made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and front porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd because I'd never smelled that before around that house. I didn't see anyone nearby though, so I ignored it and went inside. I'd just gotten off a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Even though it wasn't even 7 PM yet, I decided to take a shower and call it night. I woke up later to a noise inside my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop by to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone screen blinded me. These were the days before phones had light sensors that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright that I could use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could make out that it was 9 something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple of seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running through the bottom floor of my house. I leapt out of bed and ran for the closet. They were already up the steps by the time I'd opened the door and stepped inside. That house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hallway, the one I was in and a spare, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me just enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I had just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside the attic when my bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and then stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back into the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in a corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if someone was hiding, it would be in the bedroom because they charged back into my room and turned on the light. A moment later, the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic, just by the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knee down. They were wearing blue dirty jeans with frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away, and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put in a mental hospital for several mental disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I had left my cell phone when I ran for the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing me. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was that the intruder had flipped my bed over. I assume in an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I'd heard after he stepped away from the closet. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline by the bed and called the police. I waited in my room until I heard them call out from downstairs. The first floor was a mess, but I'd expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa had been flipped, all books, pictures and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened and all the boxed and canned food had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell, the only thing missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said that people often use to smoke meth, so they think he'd been watching my house for a while. I realised that he must have been out there smoking a cigarette when I got home. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with family and friends that night and get the door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. I moved a shelf to block the broken door and spent the next couple of hours cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found the cigarette butts in the foil, but I didn't see anything. The next day, I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed in the back and sides of my house. I also ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline there. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened at that house though. I lived there for another 3 years without incident. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of my bed, going to the closet, and climbing into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved, except now I have a crawl space at the back of my closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I'd been a bit slower getting into the attic, or if he hadn't gone into the bathroom at the end of the hall first. God, this whole thing was like a horror movie. I can just imagine the confusion of the new owners when they found a random phone line leading into the attic. It's like when you see those signs with oddly specific rules, like Oreos are banned from the library, or no pigs on company grounds. Have you guys ever seen something random like that and been like, there's gotta be a story here? Let me know. I hope you enjoyed this spooky Halloween special. If you've had any creepy encounters, please share. I'd love to hear them. Have a great night and be safe out there.